Good morning. How are you guys? I'm gonna go with my old motto this morning. It was funny. I was looking at like some old videos that I did, and I shared one actually, and one of them was when my kids and I were actually at the fire pit a couple days ago. It was a year. It came up as a memory on my phone. And I always did, hey guys, what's up? Angela Marie, founder of Find Your Purpose and Shine. This is the Angela Marie in the Morning Show. But it's funny because my son would always make fun of me, and he'd be going, hey guys. So if you didn't see that video, you need to watch it. So that was my motto. I don't know why I got away from it. It's been that way for a couple of years. And then yes, I'm late, Jim. So actually this time it was my fault. It wasn't technology. So I'm just going to put that out there. But Wednesday was technology. No worries, Dar. Good morning, Liz. So anyway, so that's actually where we were, where I was at. I want to start doing that again because, it was that slogan, if you will. It was the, hey guys, what's going on? Anyway, I'm Angela Marie, founder of findyourpurposeandshine.com. I'm a transformation coach. I absolutely love helping people get over their fears and find their confidence to thrive in every area of their life in less than 90 days. This morning show, this is Angela Marie in the Morning. It was so funny. Last night I was at, we were at a screening in, it was for the Great Suppression in Lidditz yesterday. It was, I'm thinking Lancaster County. And we went to the Great Suppression screening. By the way, take your tissues because I didn't, and I was a freaking mess. And my breathing was acting up again. That just goes to show this stuff can do a number on people. And when you have a flashback, it's crazy. What can happen to you mentally, emotionally, your physical body, all of it. And so anyway, we were there last night. And it was funny. Several people came up to me and they were like, Angela Marie in the Morning, So I must be doing something right. I must be making an impact, which is really good. And even if I can help a small amount of people, I'm okay with that. The reality is that it's not about the quantity of people that you can help. It's the quality of people that you can help. And that's key number one, most important. Now, obviously, I want to help as many people as I can, but the reality is that things take time. But this is Angela Marie in the Morning. I stream live Monday, Wednesday, Friday morning. I did change the time from 8:45 to 8 a.m. So 8 a.m. Eastern time. I stream on those days, and it's a struggle at times, but I am here. And this morning we do have a special guest. I can tell you we've been having a lot of technical issues to be able to get him on live and on the camera. It looks like he's on, but not on. Said he's getting on his sister's phone. So hopefully this works. Worst case scenario, you guys, I'm going to interview him over the phone. Okay. And so 2 weeks ago, if you weren't sure what was going on or if this guest was coming back, Ryan Diamond, a very dear friend of mine, son is coming on. He wants to share his backstory, where he came from, where he's at today, and what he's doing to be able to work on himself personally. This really gets to my heart, you guys, because I am a coach and I help people transform where they were to where they want to go. And right. So, and again, I mean, I get it, growing up in a divorced home, only, there are certain things and certain traumas that we take with us throughout our adulthood, unless we decide to sever it, unless we decide that we need to grow and we need to move forward. And so that's what Ryan's going to share with you today. I'm going to ask him a couple of questions and we'll get going. And I think we have success. So I do see him in the corner. So I think we might. So we're going to try it for sure. So this is good. I think we're good. I'm going to actually get rid of the other device that's showing. Oh, no, I'm not going to. He got rid of it. Awesome. Okay. So we're going to bring him on in just a moment. I do want to go ahead and share our sponsor. See, I'm waving in the corner. This is awesome. It's like the back, what do you call it? The back room before the show. Only we have it on live and virtual. So I'm hoping that it's all good as far as the quality. If not, then I'll give him a call and we'll do the interview over the phone. So we'll see how that goes. Anyway, so my sponsor, I do want to share with you guys before we get going, before we get into the content. All Metal Roofing Specialists, you guys, if you are not supporting small businesses, please do. All Metal Roofing Specialists, this company is founded by Neil and Lisa. This couple is a powerhouse. They are amazing. They absolutely deliver high quality customer service, high quality products. My sponsor, you guys, is amazing. This is huge. If you are looking to save up to 40% on your energy bills, if you are looking to increase the value of your home, if you are looking for a product that's going to last 2 to 3 times longer than a traditional siding and roofing, then you need to contact Lisa and Neil. Listen, you guys, they lead with God first, family second, business third. Contact them today. They do free consultations. They have a showroom located in Berks County, Pennsylvania, in Wilmelsdorf. Contact them at 717-933-7044. 717-933-7044. You can also check out their website at allmetalroofs.com. That's allmetalroofs.com. Check them out, you guys. If you are not supporting small businesses, you need to do so. Small businesses have been hurt big time over this last year. So again, quality product. Also, bug season's coming up for those of you in Pennsylvania. So you want to make sure this is a bug repellent. So it will also help in that area as well. So again, 717-933-7044 is All Metal Roofing Specialists. Lisa and Neil will be able to help you with high quality products and service. All right. So here we go. Here we go. All right. So are you guys ready this morning? I'm excited. This was 2 weeks in coming, right? Actually, longer than that. I think it's been 3 weeks, but 2 weeks ago, we tried to get him on the show. He was having technical issues, and now I actually finally see him. I'm so excited. Listen, prayer works. Pray and think of different ways, and you can get creative. So I hope and pray that this works this morning. And again, we will figure it out regardless. So I'm excited for Ryan Diamond to share his story today. He is, he's young. He's like really young. He's only a few years older than my son. He's only a couple years older than my daughter-in-law. But he is, just a ball of energy. And when you first meet him, he just shines. And his motto is shine bright like a diamond, which is so cool because it's his last name. So he's awesome. And Dar, thank you so much for being here to support him this morning. I know that you always are. You're an amazing mom. And I absolutely adore you. I love you. Thank you for introducing me to your son so I can have him on the show so we can get his message out there. So without further ado, you guys, I'm going to welcome Ryan Diamond to my show this morning. Hello, Ryan. How are you?
Hey, what's going on, Edge? Pretty good. For starters, yes, we're on. All thank you to my sister, which Chloe, if you're watching this, thank you so much. You know, it's very rare of me to ask you for your phone, but oh, what a challenge this was. Finally, we get to do this. So what's going on, all friends and fam? Ryan Diamond here. Most of you might know me as, Movie Guy Diamond or whichever. I have tons of usernames. But so as for my story, Ange, thank you so much for having me on the show. I know we've been planning this out since early January, something like that. So the fact that I can finally be here and do this whole thing is an honor, by all means. So just to kind of get into my story a little bit here. Yeah, so I was um trying to think of how to start this off right. My mind's just like
That's okay. What I'm going to do, Ryan, is I'll probably go ahead. I'm going to lead with some questions to ask you, and then
Okay,
that way we can kind of keep it. You know what I mean? So we don't go over the 45 minutes for sure. But people are supporting
gotcha.
you on here. They're like, "Hey, Ryan, this is cool."
Excellent.
So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So let's start with. So, for those of you, real quick, welcome to the show. I'm Angela Marie in the morning. I'm also founder of findyourpurposeandshine.com. I'm a transformation coach. And so I love what I do because transforming lives is what I help people do. And literally 60 to 90 days, helping people get over their fears, find their confidence to thrive in every area of their life. And Ryan is on here this morning, wants to share his story from the time he was really little to where he's at today. And I do want to cover, Ryan, kind of what you went through even during this last year when the whole shutdowns happened, and kind
Absolutely.
of where you were and
Absolutely.
where you're at now too. So let's start there. So tell me a little bit about your childhood, like from maybe like 1 to 10. Let's start there. Where were you at then? What did your life look like? And then we'll move into your teenage years.
Okay. Fair enough. Well, I would say I grew up with as far as like my parents and all that stuff go. My dad was actually I don't know if I openly expressed this to you before when we met, but my father was a magician, and he got off the road in 1997 when I was born. Him and my mom did crisscrossing. They were on tour for many years doing like this Christian youth market,
Mhm.
and making a pretty lucrative income. And it was more so a thing. My dad was actually expressing his story through magic of four failed suicide attempts, divorced parents, alcoholism, suicidality, all that stuff, you name it. And doing pretty well. I mean, of course, just going across the globe. So I mean, he was doing pretty good, and at the time. And long story short, he got off the road around '97, and for him, it was a thing of given it being an entertainer from his point of view. It was a thing of where um, it was just a thing of like, hey, as a dad, what do you do now? Like, and he had a background in printing, of course, from vocational school. And he worked many jobs from Department of Revenue to just like all kinds of different stuff. And from there, it was just a thing of like he just didn't really have much of a game plan in action. So from what I remember then is just like, and I was pretty young at the time, was just bouncing around from like elementary school to elementary school, and I mean even that was kind of a struggle at the time because from what I remember is I would be in a school every couple weeks, and just the balance of that was just kind of crazy. Just trying to make friends and all that stuff. Getting into the 2000s, so a little before, if not at the same time around my sister was actually born, he created this business for himself, and this was actually when internet was at its prime, so we didn't have the whole face to face chat. It was still in the good old AOL days,
Yeah,
and
I remember those days.
yep, the good old
The
AOL with
dial-up internet.
the dial up internet. so so it was more so a thing of the plan was to actually to go in business for himself. And long story short, with that, he built up this clientele with several clients across the globe, from state to different countries, you name it. And it became a thing where he was working 18-hour days, 7 days a week. So it was a thing where mom was at home, and communication kind of got lost between the two of them. And the thing that was supposed to be meant to be good kind of just came crashing down altogether. Dad had actually taken this business deal that just went south horrendously quick. Um, his business failed. It was the thing of where him and my mom were trying to figure out, okay, well, where are the kids going to live? My aunt and uncle and three cousins had actually offered to take us in at the time, which I was like 6 years old at that time. In those days, I remember I severely struggled like a lot with separation anxiety. And it just thinking back to those days, it literally still feels like yesterday. Just the trauma of it, and I still remember like the day like it was like yesterday. It's just like Um, and I remember the same night just, thinking like, wow, this is actually happening. And it was kind of like a moment that just kind of like shakes you to your core, where it's just like, wow, like this is actually happening. It's
Mhm.
out of my reach. It's out of my control. And I remember it was a very emotional time for my family and I, just with losing our apartment. My dad had lost not only his business, but it cost him his marriage, and it just cost him like so much. He lost his storage unit, to my understanding, and just like everything just kind of fell out to the bottom. And it was probably about, I'd say, maybe a year, if not 6 months, if not more. So my mom had actually gotten us back from our aunt and uncle and three cousins. And so from there, it was just a thing of, I was new to this whole thing called divorce, and I was mainly just trying to wrap my mind around it.
So I'm gonna
And
pause
at
you for
that,
a second, Ryan,
yeah,
real
yeah,
quick.
yeah.
So how old were you when your parents got divorced?
6,
You were 6.
6 years old.
Wow.
Yep.
So you just told that story. You remember a lot from when you were a child. Plus,
I
I mean, I know that people have told you, like your
Right.
mom and dad, I'm sure have told you, aunts, uncles, whatever. But you were 6 years old, not knowing what was going on, where you were gonna, what you were doing. Like, do you
And
remember how you felt, or is it just kind of a past, like vivid memory?
I remember exactly how I felt. And the crazy part is, I remember the exact, like, when you're, and to kind of elaborate on that, when you're at that age, because I remember like my things being packed, getting into my uncle's Cherokee Jeep, and it's crazy because like I still, like, I remember that day so well. Like, I remember what car I was getting into. I
Wow.
remember what job my mom was working. She was actually working at Eaton Park at the time as like a server. And I just remember thinking to myself, because when you're that young and you have a younger sibling who's 6 years apart of you, it's like, you think, well, they have no idea, what a family's supposed to feel like. They're that young, and then have something that you've always known like ripped away from you like that. It's more so. I don't even know really how to verbalize it into words, but it's just like, you think, well, okay, you being the older brother, how do you convey that to like your youngest sibling, as as they get older, and how do you kind of take on that brother figure um kind of way, and just be like, where do I go with this? And I can honestly say it was a pretty crazy time for sure. And I remember thinking to myself when I was living with them at the time, like, because I remember there were days I remember thinking to myself, like, when am I going to be back with mom and dad? How long is this thing's going to last? So it was also that anxiety, that separation anxiety kicking in, thinking like, like, I'm just ready to go home. I mean, like, all's been well here, but like, I need to go back home. And honestly, and just to kind of like elaborate on that moment, um, I remember the exact day going back home, and it legitimately kind of felt like a dream. It, like, the feeling was like that surreal to me, and I just remember thinking like, wow, like I'm actually going home. Like, it didn't even feel real.
Wow.
So it was kind of
So
like a reuniting in a sense.
okay. Wow. So then from there, I mean, did things get better for you? Let's fast forward a little bit because I want to get into like your teenage years. What did that look
Yes, yes,
like?
absolutely.
Um, yeah, yeah, let's go there. What did your teenage years look
Teenage
like?
years.
Hmm.
Well, going into my teenage years, Ange, I was so let's go around into, I'd say we'll start around like 13, so roughly around like seventh grade at least, and then working into the high school years. By 13, I was actually in seventh grade. Um, for any of those that are watching the stream, whether you're an East Pennsboro friend or whichever, I was actually going to East Pennsboro area school district at the time, and by this point there were like a lot of things going on in my life. I know my mom was with just a bunch of different guy friends and all stuff. And from, my perspective, it was just like, just seemed kind of like mom was doing her own thing at that point. So it was, there was a lot there. There was actually another guy that kind of just came into the picture, and eventually him and my mom married by the time I was 13. He wound up becoming my sister and I's stepfather, and we wound up moving again. And at that point, it was a thing of where I just knew I had been going to East Bend for like a good fair amount of time. We're talking like 5 years, and I just I had like a home base there with and it was good because like with the way I'm not sure if you're familiar with like what an IEP is or special education or anything like that, but
Yep. Yep. An IEP and
I
special ed. Yep.
yep. Well, that's what I had developed in kindergarten at a very young age, and East Pennsboro kind of like really had that set for me. I was like all set, and they just kind of had like more of like a game plan in motion. Needless to say, and at that point we were getting ready to move to Newport, and I was not exactly fond of the idea, and it just kind of all hit me all at once, and I just thought, well, geez, I'm leaving my home behind for as long as I've been there. So we move out to Newport, and so I was probably moving into about eighth grade at this point, so 13 going on 14, and thinking, okay, I got this new stepdad father figure, and to my understanding, I mean, he had some issues. He had quite a background. And at that point, things were okay. Things were kind of steady once we moved in, and it was more so a thing of where there were some ups and downs, but eventually, I think moving into Newport, I got reacclimated, made a fair share of friends and all that stuff, which was, hey, that's always good. Um, and then I'd say about a year later is when things kind of just started to get rough with my stepfather. He developed this temper, and to my understanding, he was actually on drugs and just other stuff while married to my mom. And my memory during that time was just I remember we would have like so many people over to the house between like we're talking we'd have his like one of his family members at a time actually living. Like I remember there was at one point there was like a trailer like right outside our house where his brother was actually living. And so his brothers were constantly in and out of the house, and I just remember he was constantly like just in and out of jail between DUIs and house arrest, and it was a thing of where he was constantly between that just bashing our father, and it just kind of got to this unstable point where he was just very verbally abusive,
Right.
and he was just very and to my understanding from my mom's point of view, when we weren't there, he was actually like there was like a lot more going on. Like he was
Wow.
beating my mother and just a lot of other stuff. And I remember one weekend in particular coming home from dad's. That was pretty much it. And she told me and conveyed to both my sister and I, she was just like, he's never allowed back here. He got arrested, this and that, and the other thing. So that was definitely a sense of relief. Moving forward, though, it was a thing of where I remember there was a lot of tension built up between my mother and I at that time because there was just like, and I was like in I'd say ninth grade by this point, and so there I was. I mean, I was just I was this young kid, and I just remember just a lot of emotions going through me, and one of those emotions was the thing of it had been such a time, so there was more so an absence kind of period where I just had this kind of curiosity of like, okay, whatever happened with my parents. And so it was more so just wanting answers out of that. And I think just because of the traumatic events that occurred there, where I was just like, I just kind of wanted to know for myself. And at the time, my approach with it was just more one sided. So there was like a lot of inner conflict that was going on between mom and dad. And, at that point, it was just like it was a thing where I'd be going from one side to the other of like, okay, dad's saying this, but mom's saying that, and there was a lot of stuff that happened in between. My mom and I started fighting a lot, um, and I think what really got me the most was the fact that when she actually got the divorce papers from from I guess my stepfather's attorney, or I don't know what it was exactly, but uh, I remember finding out that he was actually on drugs and just thinking like I remember feeling lied to, and it was a lot to kind of like, excuse me, take in at once.
Hmm.
And at that point, so there was definitely a lot of fair share of tension built and involved in. And I remember going on vacation at that time with my aunt from Seattle, and thinking to myself, well, okay, maybe things will fix themselves, when I get back from vacation. And needless to say, that just wasn't really the case. So I came back, and the arguing and the bickering just kind of got worse and worse from there. And I remember my whole thing was, I think, just after dealing with like a lot of that past trauma with my stepdad, it just became a thing where just I just kind of wanted to escape it all and just kind of like have a life of my own. And the
Yeah.
school district at the time was just more so, they didn't have my best interest at heart. And it became more so a thing of where like literally Newport's education system at the time, from what I remember, was they literally had a sheet of paper, and you're gonna laugh at this one. It was literally their plan for success for me was Ryan will pass this year. And
Uh,
my dad and I were looking at each other. We're just like, is this a joke? Like, like what's that mean? So the frustration of that, even too, and especially
right.
coming from a standpoint of, like years and years trying to figure out, like what my diagnosis was, the frustration involving that. So there was also some frustration catered from that as well. Um, so moving ahead, I tried to, at 15, I attempted to move in with my father, which she actually offered up. And at that point, so I got settled into Palmyra area high school. And at that point, I'm all settled in, and about, I think, a week or maybe a week and a half in. At that point, mom finds out, half her side of the family finds out, and I'm instantly, both my sister and I are basically taken out of the school system. My mom goes to court with my dad. They do a whole court custody thing. And at that point, I had actually found out that my mom's side of the family was there, which that in those days I was pretty upset about that, because it's just like it was kind of like, it kind of felt like in my, like, thinking back to those days, it kind of felt like betrayal, where it was just like they were against the decision I was trying to make on my own. And I just remember going back home to my mother's house, just hitting this instant like rock bottom. And there was definitely like, even in terms of like living environment, it was more so just a thing where like we were living off of electric blankets, space heaters, and even just even to bathe, we were living off of boiling water on the stove for like 2 years straight. And it's crazy because like I think back to those days, and I just remember, um, like especially with the bathing part of that. Like I remember like I'd carry the spaghetti pot of water upstairs to bathe, and just I remember pouring it down the back of, or my back or whatever, and thinking to myself, and I think that was just at a time where I had just really kind of hit a decline of just depression, and a lot of other things. And I thought to myself, like, how can anybody live like this? And I thought to myself, I had this IEP that I have no idea, well, and this was actually shortly after my diagnosis, because I know midway through my freshman year of high school, I had been diagnosed with something called, and this is very rare from what I'm about to get into, but I was diagnosed with nonverbal learning disability. And for those that might not know, it basically, some of it affects like memory, direction, and actually I remember looking it up online, and the minute I looked it up online, I remember just reading through like all the symptoms that I had with it, and just thinking to myself, like, wow, like all these years later, and it's just like I'm just not finding out. And for me, that was kind of like a low blow, because I'm thinking to myself, well, I got such amount of time left in high school, where it's just like, how am I gonna take this head on, going out, how am I gonna do whatever it is I got to do. And my mindset was legitimately like, dude, how are you gonna make it? And I remember thinking to myself, like, am I just going to fall flat on my face? How's this going to work exactly?
Yeah.
So there was definitely a sharp peaks and valleys even with that. And I remember, heck, I remember my own father and my sister at that time, they were trying to really helped me out with that. And I think out of any struggle that I was dealing with during that time in regards to that, the biggest struggle I was dealing with was just like any kind of like math related kind of thing. And as much as they tried to help me, it was just a thing of where I would get so frustrated and just I would just up and walk away. So I was in denial for about roughly a year, and finally it just got to this point where it's just like, you know what, dude, you got to get through it somehow. And I think the biggest thing that hit home for me at that time was something that not only that my dad said to me, but something that I had to learn through personal experience, which was strength over weakness. And the strength over weakness part came from a thing of like, because being a movie buff, I grew up on, Blockbuster, going to the movies and all that stuff, and stuff
Yep.
that really sparked my passion for movies and all that stuff, and that just kind of like evolved over the years. And what I love is the fact that it kind of got to this point where I remember um, simply just like if I wasn't at Blockbuster, I'd go to the movies, and as a toddler, it was a thing of where like even before the movie started, and I was just watching trailers, like my mind was in a whole different world, and I was just intrigued by like just it was kind of like an escape in a way, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
And whatever was going on in society or my life, that was just like my go-to. And it was like the minute I walked out of the theater each time, like, and I thought to myself, like, anything in life is possible. And it was just like I was pretty struck by that, and it was just a very cool feeling. And it got to this point where I remember bringing home like movie rentals or whatever from home and just like watching them like over and over again, like constantly. And it's something I still don't know how to describe to this day, but eventually there was some sort of strength within me that I could actually memorize different facts or like info off of movies. Like I could remember celebrity names, quotes. I could recite different movie lines. And then eventually, as I got older into my teen years, it was the thing of I could pick out movie flaws. And the older I got, it just seemed to like grow and grow and grow. And by the time I was 18, I was more so looking for an identity for myself. And I thought, I have this ability at hand. What do I do with this? And I thought to myself, well, I gotta have some sort of nickname of some sort. So at that point, I was like, why don't I just call myself the movie guy? So at that point, I just kind of ran with it, and it started off I would just do simple movie reviews on YouTube, and I wound up creating this Facebook page called just movie reviews and all that stuff, and then years later it turned into movie guy reviews, and then a little later on, as I got the crazy idea for to build this uh, multimedia production company. It then changed to Movie Guy Story Studios and all that stuff. So it's definitely evolved over a share of years for sure. But
Mhm.
but getting back to the other stuff for sure though. So I'd hit this point in my life where I'm living with mom. I was in a place I didn't want to be, and I just remember thinking to myself like I'm stuck in the special education class, which that was another issue that I did face was I was always trying to like fight in that battle of like trying because I mean I was always in speech classes as well, and I just remember thinking like what, I know I can do better than this. I think it was just that challenging side of me that was just like, dude, come on, you can do better than this. Like you're not meant for this stuff. So at that point, I just kind of hit this decline, and it was more so kind of like a giving up stage, I'd say. And
Mhm.
I remember thinking to myself, um, that was kind of a breaking point for me, and I just remember thinking like, like I don't want to necessarily say it was like a victim card, but I do look back to those days and I think like, wow, was that really my mindset where I was just like, like, hey, why me? Why does this happen?
Yeah.
And thinking back to that, it's just like it's kind of mind blowing, crazy to see the growth and progression of that. Um, but I remember my mindset literally was just the thing of I'd fallen into depression. My relationships with my family wasn't exactly at its greatest, and I remember at that point just basically just simply giving up and not just really giving anything my best in life at all anymore. And at that point, I was at a point of like it, considering, running away, dropping out of school, substance and alcohol abuse.
Which was what
And
grade? What grade were you
uh,
in at this point?
at this point, I was actually repeating ninth grade. So I was a
Okay.
grade behind. Yeah, so I was a grade behind my class. And at that point, it was just like, I mean, like, luckily, I remember my ex at the time. She was kind of a saving grace. She was kind of like helping me push through a good bit of things for sure. I was receiving counseling through Para Human Services, which, I mean, it was an okay fit. I wouldn't say it was necessarily the best, but at that point, my mother and I's relationship for a slew of years kind of just took a decline. I remember there was definitely, even after she divorced her stepdad, there was this slew of guys that just kind of came in and out of our lives. And um, I'd initially gotten into boxing, and I think the boxing part, which I love this part that I'm about to get into. I think I just remember getting to a point where I was just so tired of being tired that I was just like, dude, I was like, come on, you're better than this. And at that point, in the back of my mind, I was thinking like, you can either keep going down this path and you can wind up just, wind up losing everything, or you can just, brush yourself off and keep going. And, till you get to your next step, just, work hard towards, creating a better life for yourself. And at that point, I was just like, well, I was like, let's just give this a try. So I had a full-on plan out of, what I needed to do. And at that point, I was looking for a hobby at the time. And I remember, ironically enough, I remember when I was actually out with my aunt that summer, hadn't really gotten into the Rocky saga, and I was like, you know what,
Yeah.
I don't know if my dad had ever introduced me to that, those films or not. So at that point, it was the thing of where, like, I was like, oh, I never did watch the sequel to it, so I started watching them back through over and over,
Did you ever run up
and
the stairs and do the whole like Rocky thing,
yes,
like in
yep.
in Philly?
Oh, I got plenty of Facebook photos of that, Ange. Plenty of them.
You do? Oh my gosh, that's hysterical. That's awesome.
I got videos. Oh, you wouldn't believe. But so I had this mindset at the time where it was just like, okay, so I'm getting into this boxing phase. I found a hobby. For 3 summers, I had actually trained, and what I was gonna initially do was find a boxing coach, which that was kind of a struggle in between. However, years later, not to skip ahead of time, but years later, I think coming out of high school, like about maybe a year out of high school, I actually did come across this guy who actually kind of took me on for a short period of time. Former professional boxer, dealt with dementia. I think it was like a thing called um, pugilistic dementia, or I forget how you pronounce it exactly, but just that, and he dealt with a lot of CTE, and so we expressed backstories and all that stuff. He took me on around 2018. We did a little bit of minor training and all that stuff, and for what it was worth, it was definitely an excitement time in my life where it was just like I was like, yes, I'm finally doing it. Granted, I never really got into any, like uh, fights of any sort, but just the fact that I could be able to actually do that, and just the fact that he actually like reached out to me through phone call, was just like, hey kid, I hear you're interested in boxing. I can't really make any promises, but let me take you on and see what we can do. Which let me just say, if he's watching this, dude, thank you, man. Your friendship still means the world to me to this day. I totally owe you. But so progressing forward with that, so I did the boxing thing for about 3 summers straight. By the time I was midway through my junior year of high school, I had actually um, removed myself from my mother's house. I had actually gone back to Palmyra Area School District, where I got involved with vocational school. They had offered that to me as a potential trade and all that stuff. So I got into, so I found my niche with, well, it was kind of sort of a niche. So I was in this transitional program where they offered me all these trades, and one of them was, I think, plumbing. The other one was masonry, and then eventually, carpentry. So I did carpentry. I did my senior year, first semester,
Okay.
and then at that point, I did that for a few months, and something was just kind of like eating at me, to say the least. And I remember it was actually during like a crazy time where my dad was actually like going through a lot of stressful times. Like he was on edge of like the fear of like going to jail and all that stuff due to lack of child support. And I remember just thinking about that time, especially with going to vocational school. I thought, it's my senior year. I want to make this thing go out with a bang and all that stuff. And I was like, granted, I know there's going to be things in life I'm not going to want to do, but I thought, gosh darn it, you know what? After everything the last couple of years, I was like, I got to make this a memorable year. So I remember at that point calling up my dad and saying, hey, look, like I know you took Voc Tech back in the day, that was your experience, but I was like, here's where I'm coming from. I really want to start gearing more towards like film, public speaking, all that stuff. So at that point, it was the thing. He's like, well, I mean, he was supportive, granted, but he was more so like, well, I mean, I wish he'd stay in tech. And our biggest fear, I think, between the two of us was the fact that I would lose all those credits from my vocational school. And so in my mind, my options were basically, go a 13th year, which I really didn't want to do that, or simply drop out altogether and go for my GED, which I didn't want to do either. So I was kind of in between a rock of a hard place. And at that point, thank goodness for the school administration, because like I remember just, going to my guidance counselor saying, look, here's the situation, here's where I'm at. And she's like, well, I can try my best. I can't promise anything, but luckily she pulled through, the administration pulled through. They offered me two elective, which the first elective, ironically enough, was actually called The Morning Show. It was called,
That's funny.
right? That's what I'm saying. So it was this broadcast journalism class. So it was more so like anchor type stuff.
Right.
Basically the kind of stuff you see on TV, where I was basically learning scripting, which I mean, I kind of had a weak area in that, but I mean, it was still pretty cool to at least get engaged with that stuff. And then there was I was learning like camera techniques, camera shots, video editing, you name it. So at this point, like I'm overjoyed in the fact that like I always loved, like I always got an adrenaline rush like each show we did. Like especially like anytime we go live, like on Talent, for example, which was where you'd like sit behind this desk and you'd have this teleprompter you were reading off of, like morning announcements and all that stuff. And like regardless of if it was that or not, like, or regardless of what job rotation I had, because I remember the different job rotations were you had talent, you had camera, you had video and audio, and then there were several other ones, but I always got such an adrenaline rush from that, and it just like brought like such enthusiasm like out of it, like needless to say, it brought the diamond out of me.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, pun
So
intended.
for those of you who don't know, his last name is Diamond. So he has a motto. He always says shine bright like a diamond.
Hey,
So it's
I got the tat to prove it. I mean, which that
that's
I
awesome.
yep, which the backstory with that, not to keep getting ahead of myself here, but that I actually the tattoo I actually got um this year around my 24th birthday, so roughly around February. That actually came from a place I was in a really dark. I mean, things have still been like anybody else, but that came from a place of last year during quarantine and just like a lot of different things going on in my life. I was struggling through heartache. There was a lot of share of codependency on my father's end, and just a lot of family conflict related stuff going on in between with my dad, sister, and I both. And I fell into
And that
depression.
now that was during the quarantine, right? During
Yes,
the 2020.
during
Okay.
2020. Yep, during
Yeah,
2020.
let's do this, Ryan. Let's focus on that and then move forward. We're at 45 minutes already. I normally end at
Oh,
45
okay.
minutes, but we'll
Gotcha.
go another 15, but let's do that. And then I want to kind of summarize, like not summarize, but I want to go into like what is it that changed you or changed your
Right.
mindset, if you will, right?
Right.
Um, and the way you're not shaming yourself, but you're utilizing what you've been through as a
Right.
learning experience to become better. Um,
Exactly.
right.
Exactly.
And well, that's why you're here, right?
It precisely.
Because
Yeah.
your past doesn't equal your future, regardless
It.
of what you've
You're
been
so
through.
right. You're so
It
right.
doesn't
And
equal
that's the
your
thing too.
future. And
Like
there,
it. And I think for a long while it took me like a majority of years to realize that, where it's just like, you know what, dude, your parents' mistakes don't have to equal your, you know, your future.
that's
And
right.
honestly, I feel like that goes with anybody, whether it's like, you know, any kind of
Mhm.
relationship, whether it's like for example, and to all those that are watching, it's something. I mean, I'm 24, and like it's something I've really realized is the fact that like whether it's just regardless if it's like divorced parents or just like even relationships in general, whether it's like intimate kind of relationships or even like friendships in general, I mean, there's always some sort of takeaway from it, and there's always some sort of like way of growing from it. And I just think there's always something you can learn from it. I mean, now granted, I've always been one to have a share of relationships in my life where I've got ties with. Some I've reconnected with, some I've reunited with, and it's, you know, they're a pretty messy thing at times.
Mhm.
And I think that's something, you know, as human beings, we're all still working on to this day. I mean, you know, we're all humans. But
Yep.
so I'm sorry. You said you wanted to continue into the whole quarantine thing, or you wanted me to kind of
Yeah,
backtrack?
yeah. I want to find out kind of where your head was, your mindset was, because I think a lot of people struggled that year. Regardless
Right,
of
right.
right, we all have a past. We've all been through things,
We
and
do,
some
we
worse than
do.
others. Some are just like,
Exactly.
wow, but and then you see the people or the person that they are today, and you're like, holy cow! But
Yeah.
I know that 2020 was a really hard year for a lot
Yes.
of people. So
Um.
where
And
were
we. I mean,
you
we
at
all.
with
I was. I and for me, in a personal standpoint, 2020. You know, so here I am. I'm working this. You know, new job. I gotten out of the old job that I was working as a McDonald's crew member. I finally just got, you know, had enough of it, and I was just like, you know what, I am transferring to Sheets, or well, I'm applying to Sheets. So I'm in this new job, and I got my whole goal set out for Movie Guy Story Studios. I'm getting a team together and all that stuff. I'm just like, okay, guys, this is what I have in mind. This is what I envision. You know, let's start getting the game plan together. And at that time, ironically, shortly after the new year, I got involved in this relationship. I'm not sure how much in depth I'll go into this, but she was actually she I guess had a guy in her life at the time. It was like a fiance and all that stuff. Which, needless to say, this kind of relationship is very tricky. Uh, she had a fiance, had a kid, and to my understanding, she was actually trying to, I guess, escape that at one point. I remember her sister hit me up. She was just like, hey, you know, she wants to reconnect with you and all this and that. I was like, okay, cool. So I'm thinking, you know, new decade, new year, new me. So I'm just like, hey, you know, I'm all for it. You never know what could happen. I mean, so at that point, there was definitely a share relationship stuff that came into the play. I mean, she definitely got me out of my comfort zone some. I expressed a lot of my personal past with her, and you know, it just seemed like we just clicked instantly, and we had a fair share in common, just super laid back. And um, the first time, kind of just like leaving that whole thing behind was equally rough because I mean, like there was just some conflict I think on her end with, you know, family type stuff, but um, the second time was probably more brutal, I'd say. I remember we, you know, of course, feelings got stronger and all that stuff. And I remember I got a text message from her one day. She's like, "Hey, look, we can't be dating." And I think the awkwardness of that was the fact of like she kind of wanted to portray it as an act, like, "Hey, you know, let's just pretend that we're friends and from my family." So it's just like, and not to mention, you know, she has a kid involved, and she's just like, because I remember one time she was like, "Hey, would you mind like watching my kid for me?" And I'm just like, I mean. And the thing was, you know, I had experience in daycare and all that stuff, but it was kind of more so when you come from a background of like, you know, a stepdad who's, you know, a certain way, and then, you know, you work with kids, and then just giving, you know, the whole divorce experience pass. It's just like it gets to be a little tricky with someone else's kid, and it was just a thing where it's just like, okay, like how do I take on this, you know, head on? And at that point, it was more so a thing of where, we were dating for a short period of time, a couple days, and she broke up with me through text, basically said, "Hey, look, we can't be dating. I need to focus on my kid." And I was like, and of course, I was pretty receptive to it. I was like, I understood, respected that, and it didn't really hit me until like later on. But like, I remember the following day, I found out from a friend of mine who had actually said, I guess she was on to her next guy. So at that point, I just kind of felt like I was just very used at that point, and so. My mindset was just not exactly in the right place in terms of like creative wise, with just like my passion. I would replay the same memories in my mind like over and over again nightly. I became restless, and I just kind of lived in this mindset. And of course, I think the kicker of it was I found out months later that year she had gone back to the guy she was initially with, and at that point, I was just so angry. I was like, "You got to be kidding me!" So at that point, that kind of furthered my depression. But at that point, it was just this thing of where I was just still, I think, dealing with the trauma of that. And even with my father per se, we tried to run this business and all that stuff, and my head just was not in the right place. I was just in a constant state of mind of like just overthinking like a lot of things. And I was actually using this app through a YouTuber that I was following. Well, I mean, I still kind of follow him a little bit here and there, but I was using this app called Storyfire, which had brought in like a good share of fans. It was like a social written and video platform, and at that point, I mean, I couldn't even find myself to really get in the groove of that because I was constantly thinking for um, basically what my father would do as opposed to what I would do. And just to kind of elaborate more on that, my dad's actually he does this thing called if you're curious, it's a thing called branding for entertainers. He like I said he's done brand coaching. He's done like all sorts of pretty awesome stuff. However, things kind of got to a point in 2020 where I kind of just feel like that got to be he didn't have a turn off switch, so he was constantly just kind of used to calling like a spade, and it was more so a thing of where he just wasn't like receptive. I mean, he was receptive to my ideas, but he was more critical and opinionated. Where he was just like, "Well, if it was me, it makes more sense to do this, this, and this." And I'm thinking, "Well, wait a sec. This is my thing, not yours. This is for my audience and not yours. I mean, we have two different audiences. We're two different individuals." So, and I can remember a lot of times, like I tried to do some writing on this platform that I was working on, and each time I tried to go and write a story, I would a lot of times just have that mindset in my mind where it's just like, nah, this doesn't make sense. And I would just like backspace it out. And I was just like, nah, that doesn't make sense. So it kind of put me in this mental and emotional box where it was just like, it just kind of got like tighter, tighter, tighter before I knew it. It was just like, what do I do? So it almost kind of became a thing where I wasn't thinking for myself necessarily. And I was more so thinking in terms of, for what my dad would do as opposed to what I would do. So there was that. And then it just kind of like there was a lot of bickering back and forth in between him, my sister, and I think at this point it just became a thing with just going into a new decade where him being older and my sister, I mean, she's going on 18 here shortly and getting ready to graduate cyber, but it just became a thing where it was just like I kind of feel like we had outgrown each other and we just kind of needed space. So there was a slight bit of codependency that kind of like came in between. And I mean, there was, and for me, it kind of felt like more so it became a thing of like, um, well, that part I'm not gonna really get into, because I don't know if he's watching this or not, but the codependency it definitely took its toll, and it just got to this point where I just kind of felt like I was kind of living underneath the thumb of my father. Loved him dearly, but it just got to that point, and I think there was like a certain disconnect between us where he was just saying like, "Oh, hey, don't put your eggs in one basket" and all that stuff. And I was just like, "Well, wait a second, this is something that I believe in, and like don't try to like change my mindset of what it is I'm trying to do." I mean, he was supportive of it, however, he was very critical of it, and I think his mindset was just like, "Well, okay, well, why not just YouTube? I mean, YouTube's a big platform and all that stuff," and so there was a lot of disconnect between him and I in those regards. But eventually, I think the harder part even was, especially with the overthinking, the constant state of overthinking, was uh, I wasn't really in my groove of even like, because usually, like me, 90% of the time, I'd be the one looking up movies, doing research on, for example, like I'll give you a good example. Are you familiar with the show Cobra Kai on Netflix?
No.
No,
Mm-mm.
really good
No, I
series.
don't
Highly
watch
recommend it.
TV. You know, it's funny. My grandfather had a movie theater in his basement. And so I grew
Right.
up with, movies and all of that, but he
Yeah, yeah,
also
yeah.
had this
Precisely.
asteroid game and Pac-Man. So like when I was little, I would go over and like play
The
those
OG
like games.
games.
Yeah, and I'd stand on this step stool and I
Yeah.
would play these games like with the little, the
Right.
joystick or
Right.
whatever, and then you hit the buttons and to shoot things.
Totally. Totally.
Like I don't know if you even are familiar with that, but that just
I've
shows my
heard of
age.
it.
That's what we
And
did.
it's funny. It's funny that you
But
mentioned about that stuff because the scene in vacation, like you've seen the movie National Lampoon's Vacation, right?
yes, 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 I have.
There's that scene where Rusty Griswold, they're at Cousin Eddie's and all that stuff, and he's talking to, I guess, the character named Dale, and he's like, "Oh, you got asteroids and or hemorrhoids or whatever?" Or no, well, I think he says he asks him, he's like, "Do you have asteroids?" And I think in the character's mind, he's thinking, "Oh, he's asking if I have hemorrhoids." He's like, "No, but my dad does." Oh, it's such a classic. You can't go wrong with Chevy Chase.
No, you can't at all. And it's so funny. Your mom actually wrote a comment and said, quote a movie line, and this dude knows what movie it is.
Absolutely. Hey, I'm your guy. I mean, though I haven't really been in much of my movie buff groove, within the last year, just due to a lot of like mental stuff. I mean,
Mhm.
I still got it. I mean, I managed to pull one off, here and there. So
And my
it
oldest son wants to carry on that movie tradition. So he bought a house back in November. I know you were able to meet him a couple weeks ago, but
right.
yeah, he like that's what he wants to do. He hasn't done it yet. He's got all of his
That's
movie stuff
cool.
there, but he wants
That's
to do it. He
excellent.
wants to carry on that tradition. So, but
That's
it's fun.
awesome.
It's funny because my TV remains blank. Like I don't watch movies like I used to, and I think 2020
Right.
has really changed my way of thinking or
It
change
really
certain
has.
things and
It
opened my
has.
eyes to certain things, right? So
Yeah. Yeah,
it's a
and it's
lot.
crazy because like it's crazy how like especially like for example even with the theaters, one minute we were at the theater watching a movie like it was nothing, now all of a sudden then you had the
Yeah.
quarantine, and then I mean even think about like what's crazy because like I think about like for example I just purchased back in January this Oculus Quest. It's like a VR kind of thing, and it makes me wonder. It's just like wow, like the movie theaters are really missing their marks because I mean, granted, there's this big screen app you can actually get in VR and like actually watch movies with like other people online. But I was thinking to myself, it's just like it'd be so cool if like because I know you got like your streaming services, but it'd be cool because like my biggest fear is the fact that the theaters actually go out eventually, and I think that kills me deep down only because that's where my passion really started.
Yeah.
And I thought there's got to be a way to kind of like reinvent it where it's just like it's like the like really bringing like an incline of like clients in. And I thought to myself, well, okay, we have this VR, so what if we could somehow implement that into theaters where it's like a new alternate experience of where like instead of actually watching the movie, you're actually kind of like part of the movie where you're this like character, you're actually feeling what they're feeling, and you're kind of like I mean, there's got to be a way that's done. I mean, we have the technology for it. I mean, granted, it would be a
Huh.
challenge, but I would just like to see. I think the film industry be more innovative in that sense, where it's just like they're kind of bringing people more in on a personable note. Because I mean, the one thing I love about movies is, or whether it's a movie series, whichever, is the fact that like when you can gravitate towards a certain character, the rest is history.
Yeah.
And I just think it's very important in regards to storytelling for especially I think to where Hollywood's at now with its
Mhm.
reboots, remakes, all that other
Yeah.
polluted stuff, and it's just like it's not what it was, and I think that's why I've geared more towards like um other stuff within the YouTube realm with the more indie traditional stuff, and ultimately that's the plan I
or
wind up
even with the
taking with.
people that are on YouTube, like the reality TV, like the shows that my
Yes,
daughter,
yes,
Carissa, she's 13 and
absolutely,
she watches
absolutely.
these like reality of this is everyday
Same,
people. This is what we do.
same,
And you put it on
same.
video, like it's funny.
It is.
I always wanted to
It
do
is.
something like that. I thought it would be fun.
And it's crazy because like I think back to where my head was at years ago with the kind of genre of like storytelling that I wanted to do, and now I'm just like me. I've kind of fallen into this pit of like the more dramatic reality type stuff where it's just like and I think the idea is definitely there. I've been rolling around within the last year with just a bunch of different ideas, and I mean I think the concept's definitely there, and I think it's something that nobody's really done. So in terms of the whole Movie Guy Story Studios thing, I think it's definitely a an idea that people are really going to resonate with. And I've been trying different things from here and there. With like, for example, I've been trying some TikTok lately. Needless to say, which I gotta say I wasn't really receptive to it at first. Which and I also just learned recently it was actually Musically, which is what my sister used to use. So figure that. But so yeah, so it's just like which if any of you guys are interested, you can follow me on TikTok, Movie Guy Story Studios. I have like a bunch of different content on there. I'm just kind of playing around with it at the moment, but trying to kind of find my niche even with that, especially with what's been going on with Storyfire, because I know that took a drastically decline. Um, and I know just at the moment I'm kind of trying to find like a new a new video platform to use. I know my mom recommended either Rumble or BitChute.com, and I've been just kind of like going in between. So temporarily, I've just been using like something as simple as TikTok. As I mean, not to mention, I mean, the editing process of it is just like more simple and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's kind of been my go-to temporarily. But in regards to the whole Movie Guy Story Studios thing, my thing has just been like, um, the whole strength or weakness thing, and I just think anybody who's anybody has something to offer, and honestly, I'm more different than Hollywood in a sense where it's just like they have this whole thing where they like, oh, we're green like this film, we're green like that film, but it's just like none of that stuff really jived well with me, which is why I want to create this thing, because I think ultimately everybody deserves a chance to have their stories told.
Right.
And
Have you
I
ever thought about writing a book?
it's funny you should say that. It's very funny you should say that. I actually, which leads me to my next part. When I was 15 or 16, still in high school, around probably the time of repeating ninth grade, I wrote this book. Now the title was different at the time, but originally, I shot some ideas back and forth. I emailed my dad with a few different ideas, and he gave me this one idea. He probably doesn't remember this, but he actually went through a list of like topics with me as far as like what I could title this book. And the
Mm-hmm.
one that stuck out the most was In This Corner the Next Round. Now, that was, of course, when I was in my boxing phase. And that's something I just kind of ran with. The idea kind of sparked from a place of where I would all the time journal my thoughts down with regards to what I was feeling. And,
Right.
and I would just constantly write and write. And I remember distinctly my mom and my sister had actually gone to a Zumba class one day. They're just like, hey, do you want to go? I was like, nah, I'm just going to stay home, because I was in a really creative like mindset of mood. And I had this kind of epiphany, and it was shortly after I had gotten into my boxing phase and, kind of gotten myself out of my rut. And I kind of had this vision, needless to say. And next thing I know, I'm downstairs on my sitting near my Toshiba laptop, open it up, and I just kind of started typing away like different things from like past childhood to like where I was at the time, and I thought I think I'm onto something with this. So at that point, I started rolling around with ideas and in terms of my future and all that stuff, and then what came to mind was the fact that I knew I loved movies and all that stuff, which that was still definitely a thing. That was something that never went away, but
Mm-hmm.
I thought, okay, guidance counselor, possibility. I'm not sure if that's necessarily me or not. And then I thought, okay, motivational speaking. I was like, oh, okay, I think I'm on something here with that. So that's how initially the plan started, and then just kind of evolved over time through different circumstances throughout my life. And the chapters kind of got more in depth. And I would say at that point, it just kind of became a thing where eventually, once I fell into the YouTube realm of things, I thought, I thought, there's no way. I mean, like, sure, I'm ending my story in one sense, but I was like, there's got to be a way to continue it because I have too much time
Right.
invested in it. And I thought, what if I just use this as like some sort of like way of pitching Movie Guy Story Studios on like a video platform format and crisscross both readers and subscribers and use it a way as, where I have an ebook, I have an Audible, maybe even turn it into like a feature film, and maybe even mix traditional and independent film together in a way that's never really been done, and just kind of have that audience engagement. And ultimately, that's kind of where it's led. But in terms of the book, I just, my audience wise, I think back to when I first started it. I initially thought to myself, like, dang, like I was thinking primarily like, okay, middle school, high schoolers, that stage bracket. And now I just think like this thing's for everyone. Like I'm talking like single families,
Mm-hmm.
um, adults, it's, kids, you name it. I just think there's just like a lot that, people who've been incarcerated, which that's another thing I didn't really touch upon exactly. Not to backtrack here. I'm like my dad. I'm heading off on a bunny trail here, Ange. As he always
We
calls
are
it.
way over on time. Everybody, there's people still hanging in. You guys are awesome.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate you. I know you guys got a lot throughout your day going on. So hey, shine bright like a diamond for sure, guys. Thank you so much. But but to backpedal a little bit, during my senior year, one of the toughest struggles that I was going through at the time was, and it was really just a matter of time, was when my dad was actually he had a warrant for, due to lack of child support money. And the crazy part, he long story short, he got 5 months in Lebanon County, and it was a thing of where he had just there, and I remember him saying at one point, he was just like, I think back to that, and he's just like, it kind of feels like I took my sister and I to jail with you, or no, I'm like stumbling over my words here, but he said it in a sense where it's just like, I kind of feel like I took you guys to jail with me. And there's that absence part. The night of him getting arrested was probably the most brutal, only because you go from having fun, spending time together, laughing, giggling, and then all of a sudden you see a cop coming, and of course he had a taillight out. His inspection was, I guess, out of date, and it was one of those things where we're just like, okay, let's play this out, see where it goes. The guy, the cop comes over and he's like, license, registration. First red flag immediately was the inspection sticker. And then he grabs my dad's ID and he says, okay, let me just take this back to my squad car. I'll just, it'll probably come back clean. And at that point, my dad and I look at each other. We're just like, there's no way out of this. There's no way we're getting out of this at all. So fast forwarding a little ahead, two cops had actually shown, this is like around midnight. And meanwhile, he's texting a magician friend of his and basically saying about how, what's going on. And at that juncture, it was just more a thing of like, I was just afraid. I remember thinking to myself, I was like, please get us through this. Please get us through this. Like, just, please let us get out of this. And eventually the officers actually asked him to step out of the vehicle, and, they were chit chatting with them. So a few minutes go by. And last thing I remember hearing was, well, in the background was, well, my son's in the car. He's going to need a ride home. And at that point, I was like, we're pretty much screwed. I mean, there's no way out of this. So I remember getting a ride home back, from one of the officers who offered. And at that point, I'm just thinking, like, there's so many, like, emotions going through my mind with just, like, like, oh, how am I going to get through this? I don't know how I'm going to take this on head on. And at that point, it was like it was kind of like looking in a reflection, like I didn't see a kid anymore. It was like, hey, dude, you need to be the adult. You need to be the man. And I can honestly say at that point, I remember just thinking to myself, like, how do I take this head on? And that was probably the biggest time where I was like my own self advocate, where I was trying to get myself insurance. I was trying to get myself settled with, community college or whatever I had to do. And at that point, it became a thing of where the anxiety and stress of it just became overbearing over time, from just a lot of that. Like, because, like, at one point, I didn't hear from my dad for like several weeks. We would talk through letters. I would write him twice a week, knowing he has like mental illness and all that stuff. I'd write him like twice a week. The first phone call was pretty emotional. It was just really good to hear like the sound of his voice. The first visit, however, I think that's what really got me when he had actually asked me about like he's like, hey, you gonna be okay? And I mean, keep in mind this was like when you're visiting a family member, whether it's a friend, family, or whichever, and you're in between this, plexiglass, whatever you want to call it, talking over a phone. There's something about that separation that just deep down, it's just like I don't even know if there's really a word for it other than absence. And I remember him asking me, he's just like, "Hey, you gonna be okay towards graduation?" That was kind of like it hit a nerve, and I could see, my sister's eyes. She was in that emotional state, and you know, um, even at that point, like I remember using like a food shelter, which at that point I just remember feeling really guilty about using, just because it just, I just felt like it's something I should not have been doing, and to even like coping wise, I remember like I was still using my tools like with boxing, writing, whatever I had to do, and I just had that good support system in place. Um, However, one of the biggest things was uh, I would actually try to help people because that was like my escape at the time. I would try to like escape my own problems and kind of like help other people with their own stuff. And there was a certain point where it got a little too deep with that. A former friend of mine was actually going through a domestic dispute. And at one point, long story short, we had this dance coming up. I guess her and I were going to go to, and her ex at the time calls me up. Well, actually, no, she throws me under the bus. She calls me up. She's like, "Hey, he's gonna call you. Like, he's gonna call you. Just brace yourself." And I'm just like, "Wait, what?" He calls me up. He's like, "Hey, in real aggressive, like, he's like, like, hey, you need to stay away from her, like, and basically just throwing threats left and right." And even had the audacity to bring my father into it. And of course, at that moment, wanting to be in my father's defense, like I was just petrified for my life. Like I remember that night, like actually locking both doors because I didn't know what this dude was capable of. And at that point, I just remember thinking to myself, like, because my friend was saying, like, don't say anything, don't say anything to anybody, just like nobody needs to know. So that kind of left me in a place where it's just like, okay, don't say anything, but it's just like, how do you live that down? Like, because I already knew I was like, there was no way I was gonna like remotely be able to live that down like day to day. And so there had been that. So I'm left with like two choices at that point. I immediately just reached out to my counselor, and I kind of had to change my perspective at that point and say like, well, I'd rather her be safe and lose her trust and lose her as a friend, knowing she's safe, than anything else. So I think that kind of changed my perspective a little bit. So the next day I go into my guidance counselor for help, and I was just like, look, here's the situation, here's what's going on. And she wound up actually, she, I guess, sent a cop over and um, all that stuff. And I was initially asked by my guidance counselor at the time if I wanted to press charges or anything like that. I was like, no, there's too much going on my plate. I was like, I'll just keep my distance and we'll just leave it at that. Um, so there had been that. There was definitely a share of family issues in the mix of it. I know my dad's, I think it was like his great uncle or something like that. Um, he was kind of like watching out for my sister and I for a short period of time. We'd go out to lunch on weekends or whatever. And it eventually just got to this point where it almost seemed like he was trying to buy us off and almost kind of play that father figure, role model, whatever you want to call it. And of course, he was filled with like money bags. We're talking to a guy who would go to like country clubs, so he had some he had some money. And I remember one weekend in particular where um, my dad called me out of the blue. It was like a day I was hanging with like a high school buddy of mine, and I don't think I'd ever seen him more emotional in my life. or heard him more emotional in my life. It turns out his uncle had actually written him this really nasty letter, and basically just started bashing him a lot, saying like, "Oh, your son's gonna turn out to be like you, 19 years old, unmotivated, just like you, and this and that. At least the mom takes care of the kids, so on and so forth." I mean, there was like a lot said, but I was full on in defense and rage mode. Like I remember saying to my friend, I was like, "Look, I'm gonna write a letter to this guy. I'm gonna hand you my phone in case like I was like, look, do not let me have my phone back unless you think I'm calmed down enough." Which she actually did like I think a second letter just to kind of like show him like where I was coming from. So I did that, and that kind of ended that relationship. But yeah, I mean, it was a pretty brutal time. I mean, I still managed to get through it. I mean, but I think my biggest fear above all was the fact that like hey, as long as I can get through school and all stuff, that's what matters. And I just remember the pressure that time, thinking like, oh, I got to graduate, I got to do this and that. And I mean, eventually, I mean, it all managed to work out by all means. And all stuff. But to backpedal in terms of the whole quarantine stuff, I'd say going into 2021, just dealing with the after effects of that. I actually I did reach out for help. I got a counselor and all that stuff, which that's been kind of wonky the last couple months, just trying to get to the root of the problem. I actually did go on medication as well for the first time, which even at the time when I was when my dad was in jail, I considered actually. I remember writing him and saying like, "Hey,
I hear a dog.
Oh yeah, sorry, that's our dog, Joey. Joey, shush. I'll take care of you then, buddy. But I figured that was gonna happen. But I remember
he's like, I want to go out.
Yeah. But I remember that time thinking to myself, like, with as much going on, like our anxiety meds, like the best route to go. So eventually I wound up just kind of getting through it, no problem. And then I think after the decade hit was when it just like things became too overbearing. I was like, I gotta get to a functioning point. So I was like, I don't have a choice. Like I gotta get some sort of help at some point. So I wound up following through with that. And of course, needless to say, there was definitely some things that happened between my sister actually leaving my father. Eventually, I left. There was definitely a lot of things that happened in the mix of it. Um, so just kind of like reflecting back on like what 2020 was, like in my mind, I wish it would have been more than what it was for like a lot of people. I know we all went in thinking it was going to be a year of clarity, and I think that's kind of another reason why I wanted to get the tattoo that I got, only because just going through that whole process between heartache, depression, not being able to focus on my passion, and just like
Right.
family conflict in the mix, and of course with just what's going on with my mom's side of the family too. Um, and it's crazy because like the story around that was the fact of like, even with the shine bright like a diamond part, that actually started where like I remember my dad had actually taken us to this like I guess it was like a client friend of his or something like that years back, where it was like a cancer awareness thing, and he had this big banner where everybody was signing off of, and I remember signing my name, and I at the bottom put shine bright like a diamond. And so, and I think I was also part of my identity thing with trying to figure out who I was in the midst of it. And I remember Joe, stop. And I remember
You can go let him out, Ryan. It's fine.
I just don't want him to pop my bed is all. That's the only thing, because his nails are super sharp. But getting back to that whole thing though, my biggest thing for like a few years was the whole thing of keep on smiling, which that was like kind of like fresh out of high school, where I was still trying to find that identity kind of thing, which that kind of fell through the cracks. I wasn't really feeling it as much. Shine bright like a diamond, however, I would start using that like a lot on like social media. Like if someone had like a birthday coming up, I'd be like, oh hey, happy birthday, enjoy, shine bright like a diamond.
Yeah.
And then just kind of became more of like an ongoing thing of like, someone had, something going on, I'd be like, hey, hang in there, shine bright. And eventually I just got to this point where I was like, I think that's my YouTube saying. And at that point, like I remember on my way to work one day, just listening to Rihanna's song, and just listening to those words like really like thoroughly, I was like, that's my life. in a nutshell, like the whole shine bright part and everything. So it's just something I kind of mainly rolled with. And the crazy part was when I actually got the tattoo, which I mean, it didn't really hurt necessarily. I mean, well, there were some parts that did hurt, like the detailing of the diamond. That was probably the most, like, scale 1 to 10. That was about an 8 or 9. But getting that tattoo kind of felt very metaphorical to me, because I thought to myself, here I am taking this physical pain for a tattoo that I really want, yet I've gone through, this and this and this throughout my life. And the fact that I can take it physically just kind of, I feel like, shows who I am. So it made the tattoo even more worth getting, by all
That's
means.
awesome. Let's do this, Ryan. I'm going to wrap it up. We're
Yeah,
like an hour and 21 minutes in, but so
Gotcha.
yeah, I want you to let people know where they can follow you. I know you said TikTok, YouTube,
Yes.
Facebook,
Yes.
but if you can just share one of those, and then kind of they'll be able to find you in another area. But
Gotcha.
what are you under? Are you under the same thing on all of them, or what does that look like?
No, some different things. Guys, you can follow me on, there's a few different things you can follow me on. One of them is my main Facebook page, which is Ryan Diamond. Another one is, if you're interested, as Movie Guy Story Studios.
Movie Guy Story Studios.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Okay.
So there's that. You can find me on Snapchat if you're interested, which is, and this is all lowercase, the Movie Guy 97. And then Instagram, you can find me at the Movie Guy Diamond, all lowercase. Now it's the underscore movie underscore. Actually, wait, no. There's definitely, I think there's like 2 or 3 underscores, but it's the Movie Guy Diamond. I think there's like 2 underscores in between. Actually, let me pull it up real quick. This will just take just a sec.
I think even if they pull it up, it should pop up. The Movie Guy Diamond, it should pop up where they'll have options.
Yeah, and actually, if I pull up my profile real quick, yeah. So it's all lowercase. Movie underscore guy underscore diamond.
Awesome.
So there's that. So I mentioned my Snapchat. As far as my TikTok goes, yeah, TikTok. Let me bring that up real quick. And then as far as what is this? You can find me at Movie Guy Story Studios, all lowercase, movie underscore guy underscore story studios. That would be my TikTok. And then just a quick announcement too, for anybody who, as Angie and I talked about some other things throughout the live stream here, I do have a book in the works, but that's been in the works for quite a while now. I'm actually working on, last year I was working on chapter 23, which is a very important personal chapter to me, which, I mean, they've all been personal, but that's probably been the most personal one. Currently working on like a chapter 24 as well, but that's currently in the works. Trying hard. I want to get that published sometime this year. If not this year, like I said, guys, haven't given up on it. It just kind of a spoiler. Well, I don't usually spoil too much, but the title of the book is called "In This Corner, the Next Round." That I'm going to be hopefully publishing, hopefully selling on like Amazon and all those good old platforms and all that stuff. I'm also going to be doing an Audible on that, and I'm not going to spoil that part because I kind of want to blow people away with that. But let's just say there's something in regards to Movie Guy Story Studios that I'm kind of looking to turn In This Corner into. So I'll kind of just leave you guys on a cliffhanger with that. But outside of that, that's basically all my social medias. I mean, if you guys are really interested in any more social medias, you can follow me. You can follow my Ryan Diamond YouTube page. You can also follow me at Movie Guy Story Studios. I mean, I don't really have much on those channels, just some old footage and all that stuff. It's just random. But outside of that, that's basically it.
Awesome. So, thank you, Ryan, for hopping on today, sharing your story. Thanks for being humble enough to share your story. And,
absolutely.
We've all been through a lot of crap. We've all have past, and our past designs who we are today, but we can allow it to be a positive impact, or we can allow it to be a negative impact. And that's where
Agreed.
people need to decide for themselves. Do I really want to be like this when I grow up, or do I want to be like that? Right? Do I want to repeat my parents' history, or do I want to be different? And a lot of times we do repeat some of the things that we've been through, but the reality is that, are we going to be better people because of it, or are we going to allow us to go down the negative road and the negative path, right? Where we turn towards, the drugs and all of that, right? Or do we do something with our story and our life?
And I think that's for me where it kind of spawns from, because like the older I get, the more I realize, it's not about really picking sides or jumping from one parent to another when like crap hits the fan. It's more so a thing of just like ultimately at the end of the day, I mean, I think everybody needs both their parents in their lives, but at the same time, it's just like there was somewhere I was heading with that and I instantly lost it, but no, it's just like, I mean, no parent's perfect, I guess, is what I was trying to get at, and it's just like that's
I know I'm not.
Trying to learn. Yeah, I mean, I know one day when I have kids, I'm definitely not going to be a perfect parent. I mean, so I'm trying to be more receptive to that, which I mean, I think I'm a little bit more open-minded than I was in my teens about it. So I definitely, there's been some shared growth in that for sure, by all means, but anyways, yeah, thank you again for having me. I know we've been planning this out since January. Glad I pushed myself to really follow through with this. Like I said, there was some delay in between just a lot of personal things on my behalf going on, so I think that's kind of why I got delayed. But this was definitely a great opportunity for sure. And yeah, to everybody I know who's watching this, friends, family, whichever, I love you guys dearly. And hey, remember to shine bright like a diamond.
Absolutely. Awesome. Thank you so much, Ryan. And I will talk to you soon.
Yep. Sounds good, Ange.
All right.
Bye-bye.
See ya. Bye. All right, you guys. Okay. So we're going to end the show in just a second. I am going to share the devotion today. And then we're going to end this live. So it says, Jesus became what we could never be, the perfect sacrifice to heal us from our sins and insecurities. Reflect on that throughout today's story. But he was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was on him, and by his wounds we are healed. And that's Isaiah 53:5. I find this interesting, you guys, because this is literally what we were talking about. It's called the suffering of affliction, strong at the broken places. And we were just talking about our past and how our past does not equal our future. And Ryan, has gone through a horrific past. A lot of us have. A lot of us have gone through so much crap, but it shapes us, it molds us into who we are today. And there is pain behind that smile, friends. There is pain behind a smile. This is why the whole mask thing needs to stop. When you are out there and you smile at someone, it can make their day. It can brighten their day. It could make their entire day, right? Or it can break it. And there's so much suppression and oppression out there. And so anyway, I'm going to read the daily devotion. I'm going to continue with this. It says, in this final look at suffering, we see the person of Jesus, the supreme example of suffering. The prophet Isaiah speaks of Christ's suffering, describing him as a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. Listen to the words Isaiah uses: stricken, afflicted, wounded, bruised, chastised, grieved, and an offering. This last word gives us the reason for his suffering, to be a sacrifice for you and me. He was offering for our sin when he went to the cross. His sacrifice on our behalf is what led us to our salvation. In fact, it is because he suffered that he can draw near to those who experience suffering. C.S. Lewis once asked, why are so many holy places dark? Why are so many holy places dark places? The cross, the tomb, the stable, they are holy, because even in the dark of night, God is at work, breaking through the husk around our hearts and bringing life from under dead leaves. The stable is where the love of God is for his creation was born. The cross is where the love of God for his creation was displayed. And the tomb was where the love of God for his creation exploded in hope. God is able to turn all suffering to good and glorious ends. Out of the worst, Christ brings the best. Christ on the cross is the vision of suffering, the undying love of a dying Savior who loves us without limits. His body broken, his blood shed for you and me, so that we might have abundant eternal life in him. The scriptures tell us that Christ draws near to the brokenhearted. In fact, the Savior draws nearest to us in our suffering, and in our suffering, we draw nearest to him. Where is suffering broken you? Are you brokenhearted? Are you experiencing affliction? Then listen to the sounds of the cross and draw near to him, who not only knows for your suffering, but who suffered for you. For more Strong at Broken Places resources, you can follow the podcast and downloads. It says study guide, visit gssot.edu/strong. All right. The prayer for today is, God, it's because of you that I can experience wholeness. Thank you for taking the penalty for my sins so that I can experience abundant life with you. Help me to honor your sacrifice through the way I live my life. In Jesus' name, amen. And it says, by his wounds we are healed. Isaiah 53:5. You know, I found that was really important for today. It's mind-blowing, the things that we've been through, the things that we've gone through, but the reality is God is always there. God is always with us, regardless of if we feel like he is or isn't. So that's reality. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. We are really long on the show. I like to keep it 45 minutes. I had a guest, and I definitely wanted to make sure that we got the story across, because so many people need to hear backstories to know that they're not alone, to know that they're not suffering. They don't have to suffer with everyone. Or with everything, right, that we go through in our lives. We know that we are in this together. We know that we've all been through crap together. We have our own backstory, and that actually molds us and shapes us to who we want to be, or who we should be. So anyway, you can, if you would like to follow, find out more about what I do, go to findyourpurposeandshine.com, book a free breakthrough call. If you are looking to get over your fears, find your confidence to thrive in every area of your life. I would love it if we could talk more one-on-one. I love what I do. I love to help people, and I love to be able to get them to where they want to go, from where they're at to where they want to go in less than 90 days. But as far as following me on Angela Marie in the morning, I stream live Monday, Wednesday, Friday morning, now streaming 8:00 a.m. Eastern time, starting on Facebook and YouTube. So thank you guys so much for being here today. I love you guys. I pray for you guys every single day. And know that God's got your back, number one. And number two, you don't have to allow your past to equal your future. You can always turn it around. You can always let your light shine, and shine like a light on top of a hill. I will see you guys on Monday. Have an incredible weekend. God bless you guys. And we'll see you Monday morning, 8 a.m. Bye, guys.